Today, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to do a deep dive into my build philosophy for a particular class of ships. My favorite class, actually, battleships. We're going to mostly be taking a look at William Sims and how I have him built, but we'll take some looks at some other battleship commanders as well, and then I'll show you a game that I'm going to play live after we get done talking about this. Well, not live, because obviously you'll be watching a recording of this, but a live recording of me playing a game, not a post-analysis like I normally do. In any case, let's get into it. Broadly speaking, there are two different types of battleship commanders in this game. The kind represented by William Sims, the kind represented by Willis Lee. William Sims has all the sort of what you would call accuracy skills. He's got flammable cannoneer, marksman, this thing, which increases the damage, not the accuracy, I suppose, but he's all about the guns, right? He's all about making the guns more accurate, giving them more range, giving them more AP alpha potential, all that stuff. And then the other type is like Willis Lee. This guy's more about improving the survivability of the battleship or potentially the DPM of the battleship. He can reduce the reload time of the main guns at the cost of range, which I think is kind of a poor trade-off. Actually, I wish they would do something differently with this particular skill. Or he can increase the survivability prospects by, for example, decreasing the fire chance risk, and firefighter, also decreases fire chance risk, extra repair parties with master mechanic, and then these guys are generally good at buffing the secondaries because they all carry the porcupine skill. And generally speaking, across all the nations in this game, these are the two battleship archetypes, the Sims and the Lee archetypes. There's some outliers in terms of premium commanders like Azerlane Nelson, who combines the accuracy or gun focus skills of somebody like Sims with some of the survivability skills of somebody like Lee, because as you can see, she's got flammable cannoneer, marksman, and master mechanic, so it's like both skill trees combined. But either way, no matter which archetype you're looking at, William Sims type, Willis Lee type, or Weeb type, Azerlane Nelson, I generally build them, or I approach building them all the same way. And for that, we must think about what is the battleship's role. A lot of people would say the battleship's role is the tank, and I don't think it quite ends there. Yes, in one sense, the battleship's role is tanking. In the other sense, the battleship's role is dealing big alpha damage with its guns. The battleship is the class that can look at you from across the map, showing your broadside, and smack that broadside for a third of your health, half of your health, even all of your health. It can cripple enemy ships by taking away their ability to participate in the game, essentially. And that is the role of the battleship. You want to put your battleship in a place on the map where you can acquire the broadsides of the enemies in order to stop them from pushing toward whatever they're pushing toward. If it's an objective, if it's your other teammates, whatever it is. That's the goal of a battleship. You put yourself in a place where the enemy has to go past your guns to get to what they want, and then eventually you force yourself into a place where the enemy has to deal with you, and in that way you can tank for your team. What you don't want to do is just sit there and allow yourself to be focused for no reason, and that's what I see most battleship players doing. There's a fine line between tanking and between essentially letting yourself get focused to death. But anyway, on to the build philosophy itself. We're going to be taking a look today at the USS Iowa. It's one of the oldest Tier 7 battleships in the game, and I think probably one of the most popular ones. William Sims is a very popular commander, and this is a build that everybody should be able to achieve, and a ship that everybody probably already has. So, looking at the module selection that I've got for the Iowa, whenever I'm looking at a battleship, whether it's an American battleship or a Japanese one or whatever the case is, you need to know something about the ship. The American battleships happen to be pretty accurate, and they've got super heavy American AP. They're really all about the long-range, accurate gunnery. That's what American battleships are good at. They're best played at more medium to longer ranges, and they're sort of like, in my mind, the snipers. That doesn't mean they aren't tanky, but their goals are to bash in broadside. So we keep that in mind when we're building our mods. In our choices here, we've got secondaries, we've got AA, and we've got turret traverse. I've gone with AA simply because carriers really irritate me, but I think this is a fine choice too. Secondaries I wouldn't put on the Iowa because you really don't want to be in brawling range with the Iowa. It's just not that kind of ship. It turns too slowly. It's not slow by any means, but the turning is not good, and really turning is something you need in a battleship that you're going to be playing at close range, particularly if you've got a citadel like the Iowas, which is a very vulnerable citadel. If you are giving broadside in this thing, then the citadel is very easy to hit. It sits right at the water line. Obviously, it has protection, but nobody can really miss this citadel if they're aiming at it. The Iowa's very easy to citadel, and so if you're at close range, if you need to make a turn, it's going to take you a long time to do it, and you're going to be exposing a lot of broadside to the enemies that you're in close proximity to, which is going to make it easy for them to sink you. So the Iowa's not really a brawler. Thus, we don't use secondaries. We use the AA. Secondary mod would be good on something like the German battleships, the Bismarck, for example. Then we use propulsion mod. Now, in my mind, there are two fairly good choices in this skill set for most battleships. I tend to go with propulsion mod because the ability to start and stop in a battleship can often save you from things. It can help you actually dodge salvos at appropriate ranges and change your course and speed, dodge torpedoes, even avoid a lot of HE spam showers from cruisers with slower shell trajectories and such. So I've got acceleration mod. I think this is good too if you find fires are really a problem for you. This reduces fire burn duration by 15%, and fires on a battleship take a percentage of your hit points. So if you reduce the total damage they can do by 15%, this is a really good enhancement to your survivability. I generally don't take rudder shift mod because, honestly, agility is not a thing amongst battleships. Even if you're running it, the rudder shift is still not going to be anywhere near as responsive as even the cruisers with the slowest rudder shifts. So I just generally don't use it. In the case of the Iowa, I'm using propulsion mod. Then concealment. Concealment is going to be better for you in every scenario. This is a hill I'm going to die on. The alternative is RGA mod, which increases spotting range. And by that, I think it means, you know, when you can see a red ship on your minimap, but they're not necessarily rendered on your screen. If you actually look over at that part of the map, they're not there because they're too far away to be rendered. I think that's what this spotting range refers to. It refers to increasing the rendering range, which is not useful in my mind. The torpedo detectability range buff is useful, but so long as you have good map awareness and you can pay attention to the map and generally get an idea of what part of the map the destroyers are in, as long as you know to maneuver in such a way so that they can't torpedo you from there, you really don't need the extra torpedo detectability. And then RGA of ships, if you get within 2 kilometers of any ship, you spot them by proxy. Doesn't matter if there's an island or a smoke screen or anything between you, you just spot them. This changes the range of that from 2 kilometers to 3. I don't think that's useful on battleships at all. Unless you're pushing a destroyer smoke screen, which generally speaking, you shouldn't be doing that. Destroyers' torpedoes are meant to stop you from doing that kind of stuff. So concealment is going to be better for you in every way. And when we look at the stats of the Iowa, I'll tell you why. And then finally, the American battleships get access to this unique mod, which gives them an accuracy buff. So this is what I'm using. Otherwise, if you're using some other battleship, you might go with a skill that, or with a mod that reduces your reload time, or perhaps one that, well, this is the secondary reload. You might go with one that reduces secondary reload if you're playing something like the German battleships, or you might go with something that reduces your main battery reload if you're playing something like the French. But for the Americans, I think it is artillery plotting room for the extra accuracy. So those are the mods. And then as for the commander build itself, we've just got William Sims with all the basic gun-focused skills, because I think that's what the American battleships are all about. We've got Flammable Cannoneer for extra accuracy and extra range. We've got Gyrating Drill Bits for faster turret traverse and more AP alpha potential. Of course, both of these skills come with downsides. This increases your risk of catching fire, and this slows your ship down. In some cases, you might want to use this instead if you've got a fast battleship and the speed, which allows you to position, is part of the highlights of that ship. You might not want to cut into that in order for increased AP alpha potential. And then we've got Marksman for dispersion. I don't think this skill is worth using on any battleship build, so Marksman it is. And then we've got a little bit of extra range with Reaching Out XXL. And then we use Fight Fire with Fire. I hear people constantly complaining about the meta, and there are rumblings from Wargaming that this skill here, Will to Rebuild, might be nerfed. If you are complaining about the meta, I have no idea why you are using Will to Rebuild. This is the most useless, overpowered skill in the game. It's overpowered because it gives you an infinite heal, and I don't care what way you want to spin it. An infinite heal is overpowered. I don't care how much you think you benefit from it, or how much you like the fact that the cruiser can't melt you fast enough because your Will to Rebuild is going. That is not something to be proud of. It's not like you are using good positioning to avoid being farmed by the HE spamming cruiser. You're just sitting there, allowing it to farm you with a teammate nearby to enjoy the roast. And it's keeping you alive because the teammate is next to you. This is not a strategy, ladies and gentlemen. This skill encourages poor positioning. You do not want any other ship in the same grid square as you. Ships are infinitely more useful the further they are away from each other, because that's how you create crossfires. If you put, for example, especially two battleships together in the same grid square, it means that whoever those battleships are shooting at has only one direction where they have to angle to protect themselves from both of those battleships. It's very easy to angle yourself against one part of the map and protect yourself from the guns of two battleships sitting right next to each other. It becomes impossible to do that when those two battleships are shooting at you from completely different angles. Then you have to choose which one do you want to angle to, and often that means giving broadside to the other one. That is the bread and butter of battleship gameplay. You should never put two battleships in the same grid square as each other just to use this skill. Nor should you ever take a DD away from the front lines where it's providing the eyes and the ears of the team, or from the objectives to sit next to a battleship that is being focused to death in order to keep it on life support. It's such a terrible game design for this skill, honestly, ladies and gentlemen. I don't use it on any of my battleship builds. I think I have it on Willis Lee, but honestly, I haven't used him in probably since Will to Rebuild was introduced into the game. So I Fight Fire with Fire. If you have a problem with HE, use this and couple it with good positioning. This is going to improve your survivability much more. Then as for the inspiration slots, this is where I think everybody just likes to spec into accuracy. They put maybe Cunningham here, and maybe Azerlane Scharnhorst, or maybe Iachino. Well, I've got Iachino, of course, who does give you an accuracy buff, but then I've got Kondo. And in my mind, Kondo is a mandatory inspiration on every battleship commander. I have him on every battleship commander. And I'll tell you exactly why that is in just a second. But Kondo is my go-to inspiration for every battleship build, and then the other inspiration slot, it depends. For the American battleships on William Sims, obviously I've got Iachino, which gives you the accuracy buff. That's because the American battleships are already generally accurate, and I'm trying to sort of complement one of their strongest features with this Iachino inspiration. Kondo is more universal to every battleship. This guy is specific. So my inspirations both contain a universal sort of inspiration that is good for everything, and then an inspiration more tailored to the particular ship. If we want to get an example of this in my commander roster, we can switch over to Henry J. Hyde, who is sort of like a hybrid commander like Azerlane Nelson. Hyde I will use on a lot of German battleships for secondary builds. And here you can see I've got Kondo as an inspiration and Hipper as the other. Hipper complements the secondaries on the German battleships, which is one of their features, right? So that's why I have him, but Kondo is universal. And now for the real reason I have Kondo, because there are plenty of people out there who I'm sure are going to disagree with this build philosophy entirely, and they're going to tell me I'm wrong or foolish for doing it. But let's take a look at the Iowa. We have Concealment mod, we have Kondo as an inspiration. So our concealment is 12.5 kilometers by sea. Let's compare that to what the Iowa would have if we didn't have Concealment mod on there. Let's spend a couple doubloons to take it off. And then instead of putting Sims on there, let's put, I guess Norman Scott. Norman Scott does not have any skills right now that would influence a battleship's concealment. So now we should be able to see the base concealment of Iowa. 14.7 kilometers, nearly 15. Ladies and gentlemen, the spawns in this game are so close together that if you are running around in a battleship with 14-kilometer concealment, then almost as soon as you start going forward, you're going to be spotted. And when you're spotted, that means the enemy can shoot at you. That means all the battleships can shoot at you. That means the cruisers can start farming you. That means the destroyers know where you are too, so they can start driving toward you. Have you ever considered that maybe the fact that you deal with HE spam and torpedoes so often is because the enemy team can see you coming from, like, 15 kilometers away, practically? It makes a gigantic difference to your survivability if you can cut that 14.7 number down to 12.5. And I intend to show you that in action. Because frankly, ladies and gentlemen, these are the principles that I think are applied, should be best applied to all battleships. There are certain universal values for ships, and concealment is one of the big ones. So in my mind, the standard battleship build philosophy has to include concealment in the form of Concealment mod and Kondo as an inspiration on the one hand. It should also include things like Fight Fire with Fire for extra survivability against something that battleships are vulnerable to, which is fire damage over time. So, fire prevention skills, concealment skills, and then maybe some sort of inspiration like Iachino or Hipper to complement an attribute of the battleship that really makes the ship stand out and sets it apart from others. For the Iowa, that's going to be the accuracy. For the Bismarck, that's going to be the secondaries. That's the standard battleship build in my mind, and that is the principles, or those are the general strategies I apply to every battleship build. And I feel like the concealment in particular is really helpful. So here we spawn in the Iowa. We spawn in the center. We're going to turn toward Charlie, and the center is a great place to be, especially when we have 12.5 kilometer concealment. We open our game by making a turn out to the right. We're going to start heading toward Charlie, and hopefully this destroyer is going to get out a little bit, and we're going to spot some reds here. Now the reds who spawn in the center, like us, are probably going to be pushing toward either Charlie or Alpha. And the ones that spawned in front of Alpha and in front of Charlie are going to just be pushing straight forward into either caps. That's generally how people maneuver in this game. So if you find yourself a place in the center, especially early on, where ships are pushing, you can kind of maintain that position. You just need spotting, and I expect we'll get at least some kind of spotting here soon. When we do, we should have access to, hopefully, at least one broadside of some kind of ship, and then we're going to take a shot. That's basically what you want to look for in battleships, is places where you can put yourself where you're likely to get broadsides. And we spot the Richelieu, who is not doing what I predicted and pushing. We're not going to shoot at him because it wouldn't be useful, but the Colorado is doing exactly what I told you. He's pushing toward an objective. He's pushing toward a flank, and he's giving broadside to this part of the map. So we're going to remain here for a little bit. We're going to see if we can't get some intelligence data on the Colorado, and we're going to start reversing closer toward the cap, because you can see that battleship over there near Alpha. If we were just a little bit closer, we'd be able to have some shots on him. And unfortunately, honestly, this might not be as good of a position as ideally I would want. I can't really hit this Richelieu, although you can't always cover the whole map. But hopefully, we'll get a shot here at either this Richelieu or Colorado, or maybe we can turn now, try to get our guns on target toward that battleship 19 kilometers away. This is why the center of the map can be such a good place to be, because people are often giving it broadside. So here's the Vladivostok, who's doing the standard battleship thing, which is sort of just sitting in one place, bow tanking. And you always need to be paying attention in your battleship to what's going on the map. You don't want to be giving your broadside up for free. Of course, he does start reversing. That's the value of propulsion on a battleship, I suppose. And we're still spotted. We think probably an enemy destroyer is here. We do get hit pretty gnarly there by the Richelieu. So I think we're going to have to go forward now that the enemy destroyer knows where we are. It's just a little bit dangerous to remain here. So parting shots on the Vladivostok's broadside. We're not going to push in toward B because that would be pushing into torpedoes. And obviously you don't want to do that. And there's a more decent hit on the Vladivostok. And now we're going to turn away from the Richelieu and show him an angle. Why are we going to do that? Because I think a lot of people would turn and face bow into the Richelieu. Why aren't we doing that? Well, we know there's a destroyer in B. So if we face bow in, that means we're facing toward the destroyer. And that means if the destroyer wants to come and engage us, we can't really get away from him. We're stuck there. We have to, like, reverse, or we have to turn broadside in front of the Richelieu to start running. So instead, we point away. And that means if the destroyer wants to pursue us, then the destroyer has to chase us, which immediately puts him at a disadvantage. It means he's going to have a much more difficult time torpedoing us, and we're going to have a much easier time dodging. If the torpedoes get spotted behind us, we're already moving away from them, so they're coming at us at a slower speed, which means we have more time to get out of their way. And now we go dark, so we know the destroyer doesn't have line of sight on us. We can now perhaps change what we're doing and change where we're moving to. If we go broadside here, it is a bit of a calculated risk. The Richelieu could see us, but he appears to be halted or perhaps even reversing there. So ultimately, it's a risk I'm willing to take. The cruiser is going to die. He's facing off against all my teammates over there, so there's nothing to do. We don't need to push into the Charlie Cap with the teammates here. They've already cleaned up the Amalfi, and so there's nothing for us to gain by pushing with them. Instead, we're going to be pushing apart from them. Why are we going to do that? Well, presumably they're going to push forward and go into Charlie. And if we can see the outlines of ships here, we know the Richelieu's behind this island. There's a battleship further out there, and then there's a cruiser over there. All of these ships are sort of pointing this way on the map. And they probably know that my teammates are here, right? They know they're going to go into sea, so they are going to come this way to try and meet my team. If I go this way, then while this Richelieu's attention is focused on these guys, while the other battleship is focused on these guys, and while the cruiser is focused on getting here, they're going to be giving broadside to the part of the map I'm located on, which means I can hopefully take advantage of that broadside, provided I get spotting and do a little bit of work in dealing damage to them as they push toward my teammates, so that my teammates can have an easier time dealing with them. And here is the Colorado, in fact. See, their attention is so focused on them, they aren't paying any attention, and we've got the Richelieu's broadside. So we're going to take a shot at that, obviously. And boom, like 20k there. Now, Riga is appeared here. You see, this is what developing a Crossfire means. Take a look at what these two guys are doing. They're right next to each other. They can't do that. Both the Colorado and Richelieu are right there. So, they can both angle against that part of the map from both of those guns and protect themselves, but not from me, because of where I am. And our flank has fallen apart on the other side, so we really need to clean up here. We need to take out this Riga if possible. He needs to give us more broadside, honestly. I appreciate him shooting HE. Hopefully our teammates can just power through this right here, because soon we're going to have to deal with Vladivostok and the other ship there. Riga really wants to make it easy, I guess. Come on, we need the guns to reload. He is turning out. Hopefully he's not too angled. He's a little bit angled. I don't think Vladivostok actually has the range to shoot me. My teammates are dealing some good damage to Richelieu and Colorado. They are actually quite successfully pushing into them. And honestly, this Riga is doing, I don't know, a good job of dividing my attention, because he is shooting at me and I want to get him off the board, and he's kind of tanky. My goodness. But I want to get a little bit further away. I don't want to push in toward the DD. And this Riga has basically demonstrated that he's not interested in shooting AP at me. So I think we can turn now. We've actually gone out of detection range for the Riga, which is probably baffling to him. But that allows us to control the engagement. If we needed to heal up there, for example, maybe we could... Finally, we get a good hit on the Riga. If we needed to heal up there, maybe we could take a moment, catch our breath, wait for our repair party to come off cooldown a little bit, you know. It helps you reset the situation. If you can get a little bit further away from the enemy and go dark. We still got, I think, is that Colorado we're worrying about, or is that still Richelieu? Okay, is Riga dead? Good. Honestly, we can DCP that. Normally, you don't want to DCP a single fire in a battleship, but there's nothing here that is likely to light us on fire in the next few moments, so there's no reason to allow that damage to be done to us. And boom, once again, bow tanking is not really a strategy, ladies and gentlemen. You need to think about where you're placing your ship on the map. And look at this Nagato, too, by the way. He's, like, tunnel-visioned on my teammates that are over here or something. He's trying to push this way to, I guess, deal with them, and he's going to be giving broadside to me if he does. The Vladivostok is actually the only one who I think is paying attention, and then we've got a destroyer somewhere near the Vladivostok, which we're going to have to be careful of. We hurt the Richelieu pretty bad. I want to go dark, actually. Can I go dark? Yes, okay. So we go dark here. I think Vladivostok may spot us as we're broadside to him, which is going to be a problem. Yeah. So, but we need to make this turn, because if we don't, we're actually going to slow down in case he shoots. That often will throw off people's shots. If it'll make it hit more toward the bow rather than my citadel. Yeah, that could have been bad. But we need to make this turn because we can't push into both the Nagato and the Vladivostok. Even if the Nagato is tier 6 and not necessarily the most effective ship known to man, we really can't do it. Because if we push into the both of them, we know that the enemy destroyer was last spotted near the Vladivostok. I don't think he's near me right now, But if we push in toward them, then they're both going to be shooting us, and the destroyer is going to have a much easier time killing us. So instead, we're going to push away. I'm going to fire the rear turret at the Nagato and sort of wait for our team to catch up. And honestly, I am going to do something with this Vladivostok. Oh dear, we overshot him. I need to actually turn on the repair party if I can. And yeah, you see the destroyer is chasing us, it looks like, which is fine. If I'm kiting away while my destroyer... Oh no, he's almost dead. I thought he had more health than that. It's unfortunate. And he's got the enemy DD right behind him. We're going to have some work cut out for us in this game. But we're switching to the HE for the moment. Ooh, I would have liked to have shot in at the Xianyang. Because now that this cruiser, too, is shooting HE at Vladdy, our AP is just not cutting it. If Vladivostok starts turning, that would be good. And, okay, the destroyer wants to start lighting us on fire. But Vladivostok's big weakness is HE. Its armor is so tanky, it's got no superstructure to shoot your AP into, practically. So we're gonna try to help our teammates burn him down. There are people who will tell you, like, that you should never switch to HE in battleships, American battleships, as if that's somehow, like a sign of poor skill or something, but that is absolutely ridiculous. Because if I'm just bouncing and shattering shells off this guy's freaking armor and doing like maybe 1,400 damage in overpens to a superstructure, at least with the HE I'm doing more damage and I have the ability to maybe start a fire. And you can see this Vladivostok, you know, who is sitting here bow tanking, he's just being farmed by the HE spam of my teammates and by me, honestly. And we take him out. And he's just being farmed. He can only reverse. He had torpedoes launched at him. Meanwhile, I don't have to worry about that HE spam. The destroyer can't torpedo me. He can't spam me with his HE because I'm moving away. And yet I still have all my guns on target. I'm still something that's capturing the attention of these battleships, you know? They have to deal with me. That's what you want to look for in a battleship. The accuracy doesn't so much matter. Nice shot from the Kansas, taking out the Nagato. I mean, the accuracy does matter. Obviously, the accuracy is nice on these American battleships. But you can see, we're not thinking, when we're playing a battleship, of where are we going to sit on the map? Where are we going to bow tank the enemy? That doesn't enter our brains at all. We're thinking about where do we put our battleship on the map in order to get crossfires on the enemy. That's what we're thinking about. And that, more than anything else, is the key to battleship gameplay. And here we are at the end of the game. We've got 2 caps. This is actually quite competitive. It's really nice to see the 2 destroyers on the enemy team still alive. We have the cap advantage, obviously. Unfortunately, we're nowhere near our DD teammate. So that is going to make it kind of difficult. And, okay, so the Xianyang is... Well, honestly, it doesn't matter. As long as we all survive, then I think we win. There's only 48 seconds left. They can't possibly kill the Kansas in that time. And even if they flip the cap there... Oh, they could kill our destroyer, though. So we might lose. We might lose. This is actually kind of tense. I guess we'll see what happens. But in any case, I think this actually turned out to be a pretty good example of sort of an average battleship game, right? But with all the basics kept in mind. And you can see throughout this gameplay how my choices in terms of positioning affected my ability to do damage and to survive the game. And you can also see how the concealment helped me do that. When I could go dark, you could see good examples of that. This is why I build my battleships this way, and this is why I talk so much about positioning, because that is the bread and butter of battleship gameplay. And notice that even though we're not on the top of the leaderboard, the Mogami had a little bit better of a game than we did, GG to him, we are the #1 battleship on the leaderboard. I mean, Kansas, he did a pretty good job himself, but Bismarck, Lyon? Not really close. Vladivostok? Average game. Colorado? Brandenburg? Nagato was the best. It's all about positioning in battleships. And if you want an easier time and a more fun time playing battleships, then I highly recommend this kind of build philosophy. Building for things that allow you to position better. And so, that is my food for thought for you. I've wanted to make a video sort of explaining this before, and hopefully this video explains what I wanted to explain. Maybe we'll do follow-ups. Maybe I can do some similar things for cruisers or destroyers. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed the video, though. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.